Good afternoon, students, and welcome to our second quarter week 5 part 2 discussion. This is Alj Buhian, your ICT 9 subject teacher. So for the part 2 of this week's discussion, we will be talking about installation of hardware, components, and other peripherals. So personal computer disassembly. So before starting computer disassembly, make sure you have the tools you need and they're all close and by handy, and be sure to have a container to keep the screws in so you have them when you want to put things back together. So step 1, we need to have the unplugging. So the first thing you do is to unplug every cable that is plugged into your computer, and that includes the cables such as power, USB, mouse, keyboard, internet, Ethernet, modem, AM or FM antenna, cable, TV, and etc. So just unplug all the cables for safety purposes. Then step 2, opening the outer shell or case. So first, unscrew the 4 screws at the back of the computer. So on most computer cases, there will be large knobs that you can unscrew by hand or by a screwdriver on the back right side of the computer. So the left side has small screws because on that side you can't access much on the inside. Then the step 3, removing the system fan. So first, unplug the fan from the motherboard. Then you can find the plug by following the wire from the fan. So it should be labeled SYS or the system fan 1. Then next, you will have to unscrew the fan from the outside. Then you should now be able to lift the fan out of the PC. Then for the step 4, removing the CPU fan. So the CPU fan is located right on top of the CPU heatsink, so which is a large piece of metal with fins on the top. So the CPU fan plugs into the motherboard in an awkward place, so that is hard to access. But just follow the wires and you should easily find it. So it is labeled CPU fan 1. Then to remove the fan from the heatsink, remove the 4 screws securing it in the place. Then for the step 5, we need to get the power supply out of the system unit. So the first thing to do is to unplug every wire coming from the power supply. Then you must disconnect the motherboard, very large connector plug, the CD, DVD drives power, internal hard drive power, and portable hard drive slot power. Then step 6, so remove the CD, DVD drives. So first, unplug the ribbon from the back of the drive, and once that is completed, pull on the tab securing the drive in place, and then push it out from the outside. Okay, for the step 7, the hard drive. First, unplug the connector at the back of the slot and unplug other end from the motherboard. Also, unplug the SATA cable from the motherboard and the hard drive. So the portable hard drive slot is secured in the same way the CD or DVD drive is, with a tab. So pull on the tab, then slide the slot out. And then for the step 8, which is to remove the RAM. So to remove the RAM, push down on both tabs holding the RAM in place, which are located at the both ends of the RAM. So that is how you remove the RAM. And then for the last step, which is removing the motherboard. So the motherboard has 7 screws holding it to the frame, so which are indicated by large white circles around them. And then remove them and then lift the motherboard out of the frame. So that is how we disassemble a computer system unit in its parts. Now let's talk about the personal computer assembly. So the first step in computer assembly, we need to prepare your workplace, or we need to prepare our workplace. So take this inventory. So before you start, take an inventory of your parts and do not begin assembling your computer if you don't have everything you need. So because if you don't have everything you need, you won't be able to assemble your system unit or computer system unit. Then begin the step-by-step process once you are ready with everything you need. We have the system unit, motherboard, RAM, CD, DVD drives, hard drives, microprocessors, and other parts of the system unit. So just take a look at figure 42, which is take inventory of the different computer parts. So step 1, make space, make time. Step 2, prepare grounding protection. And step 3, have the drivers ready. Okay, for the step 2 in assembly, prepare the motherboard. So with great care should be taken when installing the motherboard. So first, take the board out of its packaging and put it on top of the anti-static bag or where it came in. And then next, review the motherboard manual to make sure you are familiar with the motherboard layout and understand which socket is which. So the example of the picture is the motherboard is in an anti-static bag. And for the step 3, we have the installing the CPU. So use the unlocking mechanism to open the CPU socket, which is usually a lever. So carefully line up the pins and place the chip in its socket. So it will fit only when oriented the proper way. So an arrow or a missing pin on one corner of the chip will show you how to line things up. So align triangular CPU and socket key marks as shown in figure 45 or the picture in this slide. So lower the lever, lock the CPU into place. Then fourth step is we have to install the CPU heatsink. So first is to follow the manufacturer's directions to install the heatsink and the fan that will call the processor. So if you bought an OEM CPU and a separate heatsink, you may need to spread a thin layer of the thermal grease that came with the heatsink over the chip to ensure proper transfer of heat. Some heatsinks come with this grease already applied. And then we have the step 5, which is to install memory or RAM modules. So in order to install the RAM or memory modules, insert them into the proper sockets. So which we can see it at below of this slide in the picture. And push down firmly but evenly until the clips on both sides of the socket pop into place. So if your motherboard supports dual channel memory, consult the user manual to determine which pairs of RAM sockets you should use. So the motherboard and the CPU are the brain and nerve center of your PC. So selecting these components is the most important decision you'll make. Okay, for the step 6, we have to place the motherboard into the case. So some PC cases have removable motherboard tray. So if yours does, remove the screws holding it in place and pull it out of the case. So we can see it on the figure 49, which remove motherboard tray. Then note the pattern of the holes in your motherboard. Then screw brass stand-offs into the motherboard tray or into the PC case in the correct locations. So always check the manual and follow their instructions to the letter. So you can see it on the figure 50 or the picture in this slide, which is the screw brass stand-offs into the motherboard. Then check the layout of the sockets on the motherboard and confirm that the ports on your motherboard's back panel match the holes on the case's input-output or I/O shield that is installed in your in your case. So if necessary, remove the old I/O shield by tapping it firmly a few times with the butt end of a screwdriver, and then replace it with the shield that came with the new motherboard. So carefully position the motherboard on top of the brass stand-ups and line up all the holes and use the screws that accompany the case to fasten down the motherboard. So if you are using a removable tray in your system, slide the tray and motherboard back into the case and then secure the tray. Then for step 7, connect the power supply. So first, plug the large ATX power connector, which is in figure 52. Connect the ATX power in the motherboard, and then look for figure X for details, and then locate the smaller square processor power connector in the figure 53, and then you cannot miss it. So it is one of the sprouting the yellow and black wires. So attach it to the motherboard. Then note your connector is usually located near the processor. So as always, refer to your motherboard's manual for exact locations. And then use motherboard user manual and find the description about front panel connectors. Okay, note you are going to be doing work that requires attention to detail and can be quite frustrating if you do not go into it with the right attitude. So attach each of the tiny leads from the power and resets switches. So you can see it in the figure 54. Connect the different leads to the hard disk activity lights. So the speaker and any front panel USB and firewire ports to the corresponding pin on your motherboard. So the needle nose pliers are useful for manipulating small pieces, so which it can help when we are going to connect these LEDs. We have the HD lead, power lead, and anything else. Then we have to install graphics or video cards for the step 8. So begin by removing the backplane cover from AGP or PCI Express x16 slot. So the metal piece where the monitor connector will emerge. So there you will install the graphics cards and or the video cards from the AGP or the PCI Express x16. You can see it on the picture of this slide. So remove the back cover. Then next is to install graphics board in that slot, and then secure the card with a screw. So this is how you install the graphics board. So front end notch of AGP card, input output panel AGP video connector, and we have the AGP card clip lever. So that is a part of the graphics port. Then we have the step 9, install internal drives. So make any necessary changes to jumpers on the drives before mounting them in the case. So a 2-drive system, 1 or 2 SATA serial ADA is a standard hardware interface for connecting hard drives and CD drives to a computer. Hard drives plus 1 parallel ADA advanced technology attachment, optical drive for example, so is easy to set up. So the SATA drives are jumperless, and the optical drive can be set as master on its parallel ATA channel. So many cases have removable drive rails or cages to house the drives. Then use the included screws to attach your drives to the rails or cage and slide them into the case. So for externally accessible drives such as a DVD recorder, you can save time by installing one drive rail and sliding the drive in for a test fitting to make sure that its front is flush with the case. So when the drives are installed, connect the power and data cables to each one. Parallel EDA drives use wide, flat data cables that can be installed only in the correct way. So floppy drives use a similar but smaller cable, and then SATA drives use a thin 1 cm wide data cable. Then the SATA drives use a new type of power connector that many power supplies don't come with. So fortunately, many motherboards ship with adapters for converting a standard 4-pin power connector or to SATA power connector. So you can see it on the figure 57 attaching your devices. Then for step 10, install the add-in cards. So if you have add-in cards for your computer system, so you need to do this. So for each add-in card, you must choose a free PCI slot. Then second, remove its backplane cover to allow access from the rear of the case. So carefully position the card above the slot and press down firmly to seat the card. So you can see it on the figure 59, the add-in cards. And then secure the card with a screw so that it may not get out of its slots. Okay, at this point of time, let us learn on how to connect peripherals of a personal computer. So when attaching hardware and peripherals of the computer, ensure that they are connected to the correct locations or ports. So for example, some mouse and keyboards cable use the same type of PS2 connector. So you must know first the different ports that can be found in the back panel of the computer. So keep in mind so that when attaching cables, never force a connection. Plug in the power cable after you have connected all other. Okay, so we have here the steps in connecting peripherals of a PC. So step 1, attach the monitor cable to the video port. You can see it at the right side of this slide, the pictures. Then the second one is to secure the cable by tightening the screws on the connector, and then plug the keyboard cable into the PS2 keyboard port. Then plug the mouse cable into the PS2 mouse port. The mouse cable has a violet colored port, and then for the keyboard we have the green colored port. And then for the step 5, plug the USB cable into a USB port, and then plug the network cable into the network port. And then step 7, plug the power cable into the power supply. So that is how we connect peripherals of a PC. So after connecting all the cables into their proper places, the picture in the next page should be the appearance of the back panel of your PC. So this is the picture shown below is the back panel of your PC, and so this should be the cable should be in their proper places. So that's all for this week's discussion. Thank you for listening, and may God bless you on your activity for this discussion.